بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. تحت هذا العنوان العريض الاتجاهات الجديدة في الطاقة والمياه، يسرني أن أفتتح هذه الجلسة، ويشارك في هذه الجلسة 4 متحدثين. سوف أقدم كل متحدث ومن ثم أعطيه الفرصة للتحدث لمدة 7 إلى 8 دقائق، وبعد ذلك في نهاية أو قبل نهاية الجلسة سوف نفتح المجال للأسئلة، وأرجو من المشاركين أو الحاضرين لهذه الجلسة تقديم أسئلتهم كما اقترح على اللينك الذي قدم لنا. نظرا لأن الحديث في هذه الجلسة سوف يكون باللغة الإنجليزية، فلعلي أعطي مقدمة بسيطة عن هذا الموضوع قبل أن أقدم المتحدث الأول. تحت هذا العنوان Energy and Water Future Directions, I like to say that the interdependency of water and energy is set to intensify the next decades, with significant implications for both energy and water security. Each, whether water or electricity, faces increasing demands on constraints in many regions, of course, as a consequence of economic growth, population growth, and climate change. It is estimated that the amount of energy used in water sector will more than double over the next 25 to 30 years, as we know, largely due to desalination projects. It is also projected that by 2040, that desalination projects will account for 20% of water-related electricity demand. Large-scale water transfer projects and increasing demand for wastewater treatment also contribute to the water sector's rising energy needs. To reflect on this challenging topic, not only in Saudi Arabia but across the world, I'd like to introduce the first speaker. The first speaker is Ayman Khalil. Dr. Ayman Khalil is the director of the Arab Institute for Security Studies, ACSIS, since 2008. ACSIS operates in Jordan as well as in various parts of the Middle East. Ayman Khalil is a physician by training and holds a PhD in theoretical physics from Reading University. He served as a chair for the National Initiatives on Environmental Security. He has a long career, but I'd like to point out to the main activities of his career, or most important areas he is in. In 2012, Ayman Khalil was selected as the coordinator of the Arab Consortium for Security and Nuclear Non-Proliferation, a network of 19 think tanks and research organizations from the Arab world. Dr. Khalil, the floor is yours.
شكرا جزيلا سيد الرئيس، فرصة سعيدة. أنا فهمت من الأخوة المنظمين أنه حديثي راح يكون باللغة الإنجليزية، يعني بغية التواصل المباشر مع المتحدثين الآخرين. كنت أفضل أتحدث بالعربي، لكن اسمحوا لي على كل حال أني أنتقل للغة الإنجليزية الآن. تسمعني سيد الرئيس؟
نعم نسمعك، تفضل.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Great pleasure to join ASPAR Forum and to be part of this panel with a highly distinguished group of audience and speakers to address an important topic in an important period of time. As you know, this is a period of great suspense, a period witnessing the best election season ever. And with the grand finale happening today, of course, I'm referring to the United States elections, with outcomes that will lead into long-term consequences regionally as well as globally, not to mention its impact on the energy sector. I would like to share with you some slides that I have prepared for this talk. I hope you can see them. Can you see them, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, we do see. I think the participants or the audience are also seeing. Yes.
Okay. So first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, a quick idea of where I come from. Jordan, of course, where I am now, is a Middle East country, a country that imports around 96% of its energy resources, a country that is also considered as one of the 7th water poorest countries globally. Being poor in water and energy is unique. Of course, the interrelation between water and energy is quite obvious. In my profession as a teacher, I challenge my students with a simple question: which is more important for a country of limited resources? Is it water or energy? Perhaps you would have conflicting answers, but many would think that water is more important. I have to disagree and opt for energy, because energy, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, is life. With the absence of water resources, energy has the ability to create water via desalination or condensation or any other mechanisms. In addition to the challenge that we have here in Jordan, we have a young society. 70% of our population is under the age of 30, which is a huge developmental challenge. Also, 70% of the total population in Jordan are basically non-Jordanians, mainly guests from Arab countries, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Syria. We have a large Egyptian expatriate community as well. And this adds to the challenge of sustainable energy. Following this introduction, Mr. Chairman, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to jump into a more relevant issue, which is seen by many as a non-relevant matter. A couple of weeks ago, Lebanese government entered into a face-to-face discussion with Israelis to delineate common and joint borders. Lebanon does not have any form of relations with Israel. There is a high level of hostilities between both parties, yet both willingly agreed to enter into negotiations under the patronage of the United States administration. Now, for those of you who thinks that this is an attempt of pursuing a normalization or perhaps a move to settle territorial disputes by delineating common borders, I caution you that this is not the case. These negotiations do not include disputed territories, for example, Sheba Farm and Southern Naqoura. The truth of the matter is that these discussions are energy-driven. They intend to define maritime borders strictly and only, and for the purpose, of course, of utilizing gas fields by the Israelis. Of course, attempts to initiate discussions between Lebanese and the Israelis dates back to many years ago. In fact, successive U.S. administrations dispatched many special envoys to the region, attempting to finalize the energy map. And apparently, and despite the reported difficulty that we had in the past, things are now kicking off. Why is this happening? Well, the United States believes that this is an early resolution for the energy dilemma. The energy map, more specifically in the Eastern Mediterranean, will lead into better security as well as improved economic prospects for Israel. And of course, this is a one-sided approach, really, which is unfair. This, Mr. Chairman, provides a very good indication to the fact that we tend to overlook, which basically the importance of energy, the importance of energy, and the fact that energy surpasses politics. Even if countries are practically in turmoil, you can continue with your hostilities, disputes, and highly abnormal relations, but energy cooperation should still go on, and more specifically at full swing. Allow me to give you another example, an example which I hate to mention, but I will bring to your attention, and that is the ongoing Qatari-Emirati feud. Despite these tensions between these two brotherly countries, Qatari gas export to United Arab Emirates is still taking place at normal levels. Again, this is another proof that energy overrides politics. Energy is superior. According to this high-level report issued by S&P, United Arab Emirates, despite its current massive discoveries of natural gas, it is still committed to import gas from Qatar until the year 2032, which basically accounts for 1/3 of the United Arab Emirates gas supplies. In all cases, Mr. Chairman, and let me go back to the Mediterranean context, I have to mention that the eastern flank of the Mediterranean is happens to be comes with a very promising future. It is currently considered as a huge reservoir of natural gas, probably consisting of the world's largest proven gas reserve. Look at this map, ladies and gentlemen. Israel is massively investing in its oil fields, in gas fields, sorry. Lebanon would have a terrific share, as you can see. Turkish Cyprus, Greek Cyprus is also having their own shares. Egyptians are massively engaging in drilling for oil, and we're talking more specifically about deep oil reserves. And within this context, also, ladies and gentlemen, I have to mention that most of the Israeli excavations taking place in the eastern flank of the Mediterranean happens to be in close proximity to Gaza. This is what I call Gaza gas. Gaza gas may provide a very promising future for the Palestinians, yet currently all of this gas in Gaza is basically being exploited by the Israelis under the full control of the Israelis, which is the occupying power and the de facto manager of the Palestinian shores. I realize I have limited time, so I will switch directly into another component of the energy mix, and that is the nuclear dimension. Nuclear dimension, ladies and gentlemen, is flourishing. Nuclear programs, more specifically, are flourishing in the Middle East. But what is the Middle East? So this is the map which I usually use to define the Middle East. Strangely, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, the Middle East doesn't have a definition. The Middle East doesn't have a clear definition. So this is the Middle East according to the scheme developed by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. The Middle East here is shown in white. Unfortunately, it's not as white as it shows. It's currently a very dark and a very nasty and shredded environment, which is unfortunate. In all cases, let me go through more details in terms of what is happening here in the Middle East in terms of nuclear energy resources. Now, this map does not reflect how advanced is a country in terms of adopting nuclear energy. It reflects the growing appetite for nuclear energy in the region. As you can see, United Arab Emirates is the first Arab country to operate a nuclear energy facility, yet it seems that they have lost interest in launching larger scale projects. To be realistic and fair, nuclear energy is not easy to afford. It's very costly. It is very demanding economically as well as politically. And according to this map is a result of a study that we conducted with an American agency. According to this map, Iran and Saudi Arabia possess the strongest prospects for nuclear growth in the Middle East. Of course, we know that our brothers in Saudi Arabia is gearing full head towards having their own nuclear facilities very soon. KKR is championing this effort. I know that the Chinese are now investing in excavating uranium ore within Tel Asfar in the northern regions of Saudi Arabia. More details are available if you are interested in this. So, or about the providers of nuclear energy, as you can see.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Dr. Khalil, but I'd appreciate it if you move fast, just in the interest of time, and to give the other speakers also enough time to give their speeches.
Sure. Yes. So some countries in the Middle East have decided who to join, but the main actors, the main players in terms of providing nuclear technologies are basically Russia and Korea. Korea does not operate on its own. Korea usually use and adopts American technology, so they reflect a U.S. indirect involvement within the Middle East. This is a new map of reality, Mr. Chairman, which is taking place in the Middle East, showing whose interest and new borders, more or less, are being drawn. Financial models are very important. Financial models are important because providers usually come with an ideology, with a package. So many countries in the Middle East, including Egypt, Iran, and Turkey, and my country as well, Jordan, are basically looking for investors to come in and join funding for these projects. I would like to share with you a very interesting statement which was launched by the Iranian director of the Atomic Energy Agency, Dr. Ali Akbar Salehi, who basically opened the floor within the past few months for international investment in the Iranian nuclear program. Now, if this is true, this would be a significant shift of the Iranian official policy from totally using and utilizing local resources into foreign resources. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, nuclear energy is very costly. Renewables are basically taking the floor. This is the map of recent developments of solar energy in the region. Jordan is improving its position quite rapidly, and just to finalize, I would say that providing our 460 megawatts of energy, electricity more specifically, I mean, you have the option of resorting to nuclear energy and risking your sovereignty, providing so much cash, which is badly needed nowadays amidst this pandemic, versus a private sector involvement, which basically adopts solar energy more quickly, less risky, and with less concessions to be made within the local realm. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is what I have to say, but I'll be open more for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayman, on your intervention and very interesting insights on different aspects related to energy, whether nuclear or renewable, such as solar. And I'm sure the audience will have some questions for you later on. Let me move to the second speaker, and the second speaker is Dr. Mohammed Al-Gherni, who is an assistant professor, received BS degree in electrical engineering, power and mechanics from King Abdulaziz University in 2008, an MS degree in 2010, and a PhD degree in 2016, majoring in electrical engineering from Brunel University, London. Upon his graduation, he has been with the University of Business and Technology, UBT, as the chairman of electrical engineering department and currently he's the Vice Dean of the College of Engineering. Dr. Mohammed, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Allow me please to share my slides. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be presenting my presentation today in SPAR forum. First, I would like to welcome you all to my presentation about innovation and energy transition. As of today, we can say that there are around 940 million human beings on Earth with no electricity or with no access to electricity. And that means those people live in poverty and bad education, unemployment, health problems, no technologies, and no even accessibility to drinking water. So this is a huge problem in our planet, which raises a red flag to the whole world to solve this problem and find solutions, to collaborate, to make change to the life of these people. So the change or the energy transition is a change within this existing system, and that includes changing in fuel. So we are moving from coal, oil, nuclear to another resource. We are moving to more renewable sources within the energy mix, which now representing around 19% of renewable energy. Plus, we are expecting more and more contribution in the near future to achieve around 50% of the energy mix around the globe. Also, it's considered as a change in technology. And we can see now there are many recent technologies such as electric vehicles which are emerging, and we are expecting also the electric vehicle to acquire half of the world fleet by 2042. So yes, there is energy transition within this technology. We are also expecting wind energy to overcome the hydropower by 2031 by the advancement of technology and investment within these technologies. So it's also considered as a change in the prime mover, and that includes the infrastructure and the generations and the power plants as well. Finally, it's a change in the economic system. It's change in the policy. So more and more economy is going towards diversification of its resources. We have seen many policies like the feed-in tariff to enable the renewable energy emergence. Also, there are a lot of policies for the market, share market, and as well, which is forming a new sector for the energy sector. Now, why we're going for energy transition? There are many reasons that could encourage us to energy transition. And the first one is the government resources, freeing up government resources. For example, countries such as our country, Saudi Arabia, which is the largest oil producer, they should not rely only on this source. They should integrate more renewable energy. Also, they should consider the nuclear energy as a solution. And we have seen that these actually are happening now within the 2030 vision in the energy sector. Also, other countries without any resources of fossil fuel, they shall not rely only on importing all the energy from outside. They should get use of what they have of free resources such as solar and wind energy. The second one, to secure and affordable power to all. As you saw in the first slide, there are around 1 billion people without electricity now. So the energy transition will give us more solutions and technology that help connecting more people and spreading the technology and the communication. The third is the contribution to sustainable goal, which become very necessary that all the world, all the countries collaborate together. And that includes governments, companies, public and private institutions to collaborate to achieve the goal of sustainable energy. It also helps to reduce the emission and air pollution, to tackle the gas emission and the global warming problem. Also, to increase the welfare and growth of the nation. It should also provide more job opportunities and knowledge transfer. Now, if we look here in this chart, the electricity generation from 2012 until 2045, we can see that, of 2040, that where we stand now, the current status at 2020, there is a generation of around 26 trillion kilowatt hour, and this number is increasing by time because of that demand that increase annually. Now, if we look at the energy mix here, we see that renewable is emerging and it's increasing with a steady state, which gives us a good indication about the participation of renewable in the future. Also, we still see coal and natural gas as a fossil fuel are having a huge contribution, and we're still relying on this even in the future. We must know that because they are cheap, they are reliable resources, so we are still counting on them unless there will be, for example, a huge breakthrough in energy storage, which will enable more renewable usage within our system. What is the innovation to do with the energy transition? Innovation actually is enabling the transition, is helping this process to happen. So and that includes innovation in policies and regulation, enabling infrastructure, innovative market design and financial instruments, business model for the renewable energy, and finally the technology innovation, which we are concerned about here, the role of the research and development center, universities, and even governments and companies to work to find solutions. These solutions should enable the use of these resources. It also gives us, it should reduce the cost of these technologies, so we can use or we can facilitate more of these resources. Now, the total public energy for R&D or research and development by technology, from 1974, we can see that nuclear was presenting around 75% at that time, and a lot of research and investment was putting in to develop this technology. But as of now, we see renewable energy by 2010 and 2019. There has been a huge investment to support research, to support investment, to support innovative technology and solutions, which can be presented. As well, we can see that energy efficiency becomes crucial, and it's still a crucial and very important or enabler of energy transition. As well as we see that hydrogen is start to emerge, and the power storage solution starting to emerge in the last 10 to 15 years. And we expected to put more and more investment within the hydrogen and energy storage, as well as energy efficiency in the near future. So what was the impact of this research? What was the impact of having innovative solutions? You can see here the last 10 years, the prices of some of the most important renewable energy, which is solar PV, solar concentrated solar power, and the offshore wind and the onshore wind. And we can see that the prices are declined very dramatically in the 10 years, in the past 10 years. And that helps to facilitate, to utilize more and more solar PV around the world, and more wind turbine and or wind energy. And actually, in Saudi Arabia now, the projects of solar and the wind turbine are the cheapest in the world, with a kilowatt hour cost of around 8.7 halala, which is around 2 cents, which is the cheapest in the world. And that's because of the huge development that happened within the past decade. If we don't have the research fund to support this institution, this would have never happened in this short amount of time. And we're still encouraging more and more to find more solutions to enable these resources. Now, what are the gaps within the energy sector now? Renewable energy integration.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Dr. Mohammed, but I think we need to move a bit faster. If you have 1 minute, because we're running out of time.
Okay, this is my last slide. So, yes, the innovation gaps include renewable energy integration, find solutions for the integration, because now we're having so many types, and we still having our existing grid to facilitate or to host all these resources. Solution for CO2 mitigation, energy storage, energy efficiency, also for electric vehicles and smart meters. So, to conclude my presentation, these are some recommendations to support R&D, to support research and innovation within the energy, by establishing an independent, sustainable energy innovation fund for startups and R&D center to develop and implement energy technology roadmap through public and private collaboration, and also an initiative by the Ministry of Energy to organize a national prize to recognize most innovative and outstanding entrepreneurial solution in energy technology. I would like to end my presentation with this quotation for Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, the Minister of Energy, last week in the Energy Summit in Singapore. We said the world needs to develop sustainable technologies to meet climate goals, such as improving energy efficiency. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. And I move on to the third speakers, Professor Diraya Baran. She's an assistant professor in material science and engineering, physical science and engineering division center, membership of KAUST Solar Center. The floor is yours, Professor Baran.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Let me share my content in the meantime. And I hope you can all hear this, see this. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be on this session and to talk about the future of energy, which is actually a very difficult question. And I see we are actually criticizing and also commenting on several different aspects. And I'll try to share what I know about it in the next couple of minutes. And I chose my title as "Can we live off the grid while we are living in a grid era with the energy and the electricity?" So to start with, I would like to ask you what do we mean off the grid when we say it? Well, if this was in 1990s, off the grid could mean something very much like this, as you see in the picture. And this man is called Wes Kennedy. In early 90s, and in the US, he has his wooden lodge in the middle of nowhere, and he's not connected to the electricity grid, and he chose to live off the grid. And instead, he's getting his electricity from PV panels in 1990s and charging his battery. And this is a scenario where people need power, and as mentioned in the previous talk, and in remote or unconnected areas. But what about our, today's idea of off-grid? So it's a little different compared to 1990s if you ask to Elon Musk or Tesla. And we have our suburban houses and photovoltaic embedded tile solar panels on the roof, charging our batteries, which we can then use to power our house devices and homes at night, and our electrical car, whose battery can also doubles up as an additional storage unit. And this is not much actually off the grid, but it's off the unsustainable or traditional grid. And this is great, if not idealized scenario for our suburban living. But what about our futures and cities? So I'm originally from Turkey, a country which is said to be the gateway between Europe and Asia, with the city of Istanbul bridging the two, as you see the pictures in 1950s. Istanbul is now one of the world's largest cities by population, up from just 1.7 million in the 1950s. But one thing that has grown much faster than its population, and that is the accelerating thirst for its energy. Rapid urbanization and an accelerating demand for the energy. So this pattern we have seen not just in Turkey, but across the globe. I hope you might like a short guessing game with me. So I'd like to ask if anyone can know or recognize the city on the left top in 1945. Well, this was Tokyo. Currently, over 37 million, it is the world's largest city as of today. So those years, the government promoted conversion from coal to heavy oil to develop heat control for their energy resources, and nuclear in the later years, as you know. But today, the electricity generation from fossil fuels just in 2019 was 9 terawatt hour below in Japan compared to its 2010 levels. And the nuclear has been even reduced by more than 220 terawatts after the Fukushima accident. So Japan has its lessons and successfully improved the efficiency of its renewable sources and deployed solar power and reduced the dependency on fossil fuel and nuclear. The second city, if you can guess, is something closer to us. Actually, it's Dubai, which has seen one of the most dramatic changes, going from a small fishing town in 2000s to a global financial trading hub and discovered oil in 1960s. And finally, I couldn't skip this one, and I hope everybody can guess this. This is Riyadh in 1990 versus today. So let's not wait to have such catastrophic disasters to happen in order to move away from oil and put our efforts for safe and sustainable off-the-grid sources and solutions in the near future, maybe being NEOM and one of them in Saudi Arabia. So from the pictures I showed you, I hope it's clear urbanization is out there. And as we densify the population and the number of people, we're left with no option but to build upwards, fitting more people onto the same area of land, and find alternative energy sources to feed this energy-hungry century. And to add this growing population is predicted to concentrate actually in the areas that are characterized as sun-rich or hot temperatures, bringing in even a more demand for energy in the form of cooling that we need to talk about. So the first question then comes to my mind is not how we're going to make our cities smarter, but how are we going to keep the lights on in these places? So obviously this will require customized and regional solutions, as well as combination of sustainable resources, I believe, depending on the geographical area of an urban environment and also its natural and sustainable resources. So one obvious solution to move away from a traditional grid in our region, especially in Saudi and GCC, would of course to include solar. Last year, solar energy was the fastest growing installed renewable energy source on the planet globally, driven by the semiconductor technology silicon, as you see on the left. So I just want to talk about a bit on the silicon technology. So silicon absorbs light, as you see on the right side, ranging from a visible to our eyes to near infrared, and it makes it opaque, as you see on the left picture. So this property makes it very efficient, but also puts some limitations on its usage in the future, I believe. If you have a very quick Google search for the cities of the future, it's not this what you're going to find, I can assure you. Instead, you will find buildings with the freedom of design, using a lot of glass to utilize daylight, a move towards connected and responsive cities with the IoTs. So how are we going to power this glass-filled, sustainable, smart environment? So as a scientist today, I just want to talk about a solution that can at least serve as an alternative to existing unsustainable grid life. And that's using transparent solar windows. This is a technology that we have come up with in the last couple of years in KAUST. It's a new form of solar technology that is capable of generating electricity by absorbing non-visible light. And what do I mean with this? So here is the solar spectrum again. And here, this region, you see that the human eye can observe. So it's very narrow compared to the rest of it, right? So through a combination of new non-silicon materials that are not out there commercially yet, we have designed a new solar panel, as you see on the left, that is able to selectively absorb the infrared portion of the spectrum and convert it into electricity. So it leaves the visible part undetectable to human eye, so it's transparent to your eyes. So us and a lot of experts in the field have worked over a decade to get this full picture. So utilizing this infrared actually allows us to generate electricity while maintaining the transparency of the windows, unlike silicon. So the other huge benefit, obviously, is that the new transparent solar panels absorb the infrared part, which is effectively responsible for the heat that enters to our buildings from the outside. So this means we can actually seamlessly integrate our technology to current building products, such as double glazed windows. This would allow a complete building design freedom and make a truly building integrated photovoltaic product, turning our buildings into power stations for the future that can allow off the grid to some extent. So what is the impact of this technology? The first, obviously, is in its potential use for energy production and saving. This technology can reduce the energy demand of buildings up to 30% without compromising the building design. So it can also improve the wellness, productivity, and satisfactory of the employees for huge commercial buildings. So with the transparent solar windows, we can generate electricity and reduce the energy consumption, which importantly let the 70% of the light in still. So this high level of transparency actually unlocks the second huge market, which is agriculture. So we always had to choose our land for actually food or fuel in the regions where agriculture is going on. So recall an age-old problem. So should we use our land to grow food wood burned for crops to eat or actually for fuel. This trade-off still continues in terms of the biofuel production. Our windows let all the necessary light for the plant growth owing to its transparent properties. So this means if we can coat the roofs of the greenhouses with this technology, for the first time we can achieve both plant growth and electricity production from the same area of land. Urban and desert agriculture can become a reality one day. So in this regard, I'm also part of a startup called Iris, which is spinned off from KAUST campus, and we're working to make this technology a viable one for the future. In making our cities smarter and smarter in the era of digitalization, what I would like to convey here is that I believe we should focus on sustainable power sources. Just one more minute. Okay. Thank you. We should focus on sustainable power sources for the good of humankind, as well as climate change mitigation. So in this regard, I believe our oldest green energy sources, such as sun, will power our newest innovations. So I want to end this with the slide. So next time you see a piece of glass or a window, think to yourself why we're still not producing electricity from these. So we have the technology, and let's not wait for tomorrow. Let's work on the sustainable off-the-grid together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Diraya. And now we're moving to the last speaker. And last speaker is Professor Hong. She's an associate professor in the Division of Biological and Environmental Science and Engineering at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, KAUST. She received her PhD in Environmental Science and Engineering from National University of Singapore in 2009. She joined KAUST in 2012 as an assistant professor and was promoted to associate professor in July 2018. Professor Hong, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I have shared my slide during the introduction to save some time, and I'm aware of the time constraints, so I'm going to try to move fast. So good afternoon, my name is Pei-Ying Hong, and I'm an associate professor, as Mr. Chairman has just introduced. So I'm very honored to be given this opportunity today to talk about the water energy nexus. So you will see that I'm switching gear a little bit. But before we start, I think most of the presenters have already mentioned just now about the fact that our world is growing rapidly. And an inevitable trend as to meet with the global population growth is the fact that cities are going to be more and more dense, as seen over here in this figure. And majority of the growth in terms of the urban cities are going to be spread along the coastal areas. And the reason to account for this spreading of cities along the coastal area is due to the fact that these are the areas that are near to water as well. And this reiterates the fact that water sustains life, and not merely because we can drink it, but also the food that we need to eat depends on the water in order to grow. So when we supply the water to urban cities for drinking water purposes or to the peri or rural areas for agricultural production, we need to be aware of the fact that it's not just the water that is to be mentioned. It's also with regards to the energy costs. So as the first speaker has already mentioned, water and energy are intricately linked, and any development of the water and energy policies needs to be integrated together and discussed together in tandem as well. So considering all the problems that we have on hand, my presentation is mainly going to focus on what we derive as the energy efficient water systems. And we really want to come up with a way to manage our water and wastewater in a very energy efficient way, such that it can be sustainably used for our future generations. And specifically, we want to clean our wastewater in a way that it is safe to reuse, the clean wastewater, and at the same time recover energy and nutrients from those wastewater. So this is in contrast to the current way at which we are cleaning our wastewater. So over here, you see a diagram of the way we are currently cleaning our wastewater, where majority of the organic carbon and nutrients are removed in the conventional activated sludge process. And in this process, dissolved oxygen are constantly aerated into it so that the aerobic microorganisms can make use of the organic carbon in the presence of oxygen to remove the nutrients and the waste that are present in the wastewater. In certain instances, we can also add in a membrane to improve the effluent quality so that they will be good quality for reuse. But regardless of this process, whether it's a conventional activated sludge process or aerobic membrane bioreactor, there's a tremendous amount of energy cost associated with it because of the need for the pumping of dissolved oxygen, or otherwise what we call as aeration. So to take, for example, the conventional way of cleaning our wastewater by means of activated sludge requires about 1 kilowatt-hour of energy per cubic meters of wastewater cleaned. And by putting in an aerobic membrane, this triples the amount of energy cost. And depending on the configuration, regardless of the configuration, about 40 to 60% of the total energy consumption associated with cleaning our wastewater is due to the need for aeration. So this imposes a tremendous energy cost with regards to how we clean our wastewater. And in addition to that, because we are making use of aerobic microorganisms, these aerobic microorganisms are rapidly growing into large volume of biomass solid waste. And this solid waste has to be regularly disposed either in the landfill or through incineration, and incurs additional energy costs as well as disposal costs. So it's estimated that disposing all this sludge from our conventional wastewater treatment process will incur about 0.002 to 0.04 kilowatt-hour per cubic meters of sludge disposed. So that's an additional energy cost as well. So an alternative method would be to put those sludge into an anaerobic digester and then convert this anaerobic digester into, by fermenting those sludge in the anaerobic digester, we can harvest biogas or methane gas that can then be converted into electrical energy. However, if we think about the amount of energy cost that is already needed to clean the wastewater, the amount of energy that we can harvest from the sludge is actually very insignificant and is not able to cover the total energy cost. So instead, what we propose at CAUS, along with my team, is to totally revamp the entire system of cleaning our wastewater by means of the anaerobic membrane bioreactor. So as its name suggests, the anaerobic membrane bioreactor totally eliminates the need for aeration. And so by eliminating the need for aeration, we are able to improve the energy landscape because we no longer need the 40 to 60% of the energy costs traditionally related to the cleaning of wastewater. And how this is achieved is because the anaerobic membrane bioreactor makes use of totally different microorganisms, namely the fermenters, the syntrols, and the methanogens. They can also remove the organic carbon, but instead of removing the organic carbon to produce more biomass, what they do is they convert the organic carbon into methane, which is a biogas that can be burnt off to produce energy. In fact, the methane has a caloric value of about 8 kilowatt-hour of energy per cubic meters of the methane gas volume. And using the current technologies, the conversion to electrical energy is about 32 to 40%, which means for every cubic meters of methane gas, we are able to harvest about 3 kilowatt-hour of energy. And of course, this amount of energy is also going to increase with time when we see improvements in the conversion technology. And the theoretical yield of methane can be estimated to be about 0.365 liters of methane per gram of COD. And what this means is that the higher the organic carbon load that is present in the wastewater, the more methane and electrical energy we can harvest from cleaning our wastewater, to the point that perhaps we do not even need to input any energy to clean our wastewater anymore. In fact, the wastewater will now become an energy source in which we can harvest energy to clean the wastewater and perhaps even produce excess energy that can be channeled off to somewhere else. So besides improving the energy landscape, another benefit of the anaerobic membrane bioreactor lies in the fact that there is also a lower sludge production cost. And that's really because of the different types of microorganisms that we are talking about in an anaerobic reactor. So just to contrast a little bit, the solid retention time in a conventional aerobic-based treatment process is about 20 to 40 days. In contrast, the anaerobic-based treatment process prolongs the solid retention time by 3 days, which means that you need to only empty and dispose of the sludge at 3 times lower frequency, which equates to 3 times lower volume of sludge that's generated. And all this means that ultimately, in a longer time and in a larger wastewater treatment plants, we are also going to have a significant financial savings in terms of the solid disposal costs. So finally, the third advantage with regards to the anaerobic membrane bioreactor lies in the fact that the ammonium and the phosphate, which are the nutrients that are present in the municipal wastewater, is still retained even after the anaerobic membrane bioreactor. Of course, one can argue that this can be a double-edged sword because it will mean that the ammonium concentration in the final effluent will not be able to meet the current regulations that are devised based on the aerobic-based wastewater treatment processes. And to circumvent that, if indeed we have to meet the regulations, what is being proposed is that the anaerobic membrane bioreactor can go into a nature-based filtration systems that are present in the urban cities where trees and plants are grown in specially designed sand columns like shown over here. And the fauna, the plants, as well as the microorganisms associated with the roots of the plants can serve to remove the ammonium and phosphate.
Professor Hong, can you just summarize very quickly because we're running out of time. They're calling me to end this session.
Sure. And then the sand columns can also achieve a further physical removal of the contaminants. And what this means is that we will have a final treated effluent that is of good quality and that can be used in the urban cities to achieve a green space such as this. And this kind of dream is not impossible for arid countries such as Saudi Arabia if we were to sustainably clean our wastewater and treat them and reuse them in a very sustainable manner. So in CAUS, we are already in the process of scaling up our anaerobic membrane bioreactor integrated with renewable energy systems such as the solar energy and coupled with disinfection strategies. And the goal is really to show that we are able to clean our wastewater in a very sustainable and energy positive manner as well. So to sum up, we need to be aware that there's an energy cost associated with our water cycle and that we need to minimize the energy cost in order to achieve a smart and sustainable water system. There are already technologies that are present to significantly lower the energy cost, just like the anaerobic-based treatment process that I have emphasized on. But the really key critical aspect is that we need to translate those sustainable technologies from the lab to the market in order to put these sustainable technologies into the markets and reuse and to clean the water in a very sustainable way. And so with that, I will take any questions. I'm sorry about the time taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hong. As we come toward the end of this session, I extend my thanks to the speakers, Dr. Ayman, Dr. Muhammad, Professor Diraya, and Professor Hong for their contribution and interesting insights and ideas on this energy and the future directions. Now, this session is coming to a close. So I wish all of you a good day, and thanks to the audience who have been also following on us. Thanks a lot, and goodbye to everyone.
Thank you.